watching Shalom TV, celebrating Jewish culture. Funding for Shalom TV has been provided by the following. And by viewers like you.
Jewish Education in Media is pleased to present L'Chaim, a program that highlights the people, issues, and events of importance to the Jewish community. Now here is your host, Rabbi Mark Golub.
Hello, I'm Mark Golub, and one of the most wonderful perks I enjoy is having the chance to simply join in conversation with some of the most interesting and creative individuals on the world Jewish scene today to talk about the issues of importance to Jewish life. And so I'm extremely pleased to be joined now by Sam Norich, Executive Director and Publisher of The Forward, one of the leading Jewish American newspapers published both in English and in Yiddish here in America. Sam has a most impressive background, which you should be aware of. He's currently serving as Vice President of Amenu, the American Labor Zionist Organization, and is a past Vice President of the World Jewish Congress and the past Executive Director of the YIVO Institute for Jewish Research. And Sam Norich, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to be able to sit with you.
Thanks, Mark.
I'm also most pleased to welcome back Izzy Leibler, an international Jewish leader who helped lead Australian Jewry for decades. He continues to be a Jewish leader in the area of human rights worldwide. Izzy is also an outspoken columnist for the Jerusalem Post, and you can read his column online as well. And Izzy, thank you so much for finding time to sit with us again on your trip here from Israel.
My pleasure, Mark.
It's a joy to see you. Let me ask you in general, as you look at the peace process today, are you hopeful? Do you believe right now we are dealing with a Palestinian leadership which is serious about making peace with Israel?
I think we're dealing with a divided Palestinian leadership, part of which is serious about making peace with Israel. Fayyad.
Really?
Yes.
Oh. Do you think it's consistent for such a person to be participating in little celebrations by shaheeds who blew themselves up?
You know, there are some people on the Israeli side, on the Jewish side, who are participating in celebrations that I'm not proud of either.
And are they kind of like in the
but
leading,
the question
in the leading side of government, or are you talking about a few drecks on the outside?
They're not simply drecks.
Really?
We're talking about, look, the ministers in Bibi's government get up and say, we don't want a two-state solution. You're crazy?
Who says that?
Who says
Yuli
that?
Edelstein. Yuli Edelstein, who Minister of Information, no less, or maybe disinformation, said it before a meeting of the Likud Central Committee.
By the way,
this is not a secret.
By the way, there's nothing obscene about saying
Bibi's,
that in the context of today as things are today. If he says ever, it's another matter. In the context of things as they are today, for goodness sake, you can have a lot of logic in saying...
I'm touched that you're racing to excuse what he said.
Oh, but I'm glad you are, because I think he's a good guy. He may not be in the right job, but he's a good guy.
Yes, and another one who's not in the right job is Avigdor Lieberman, who got up in front of the General Assembly of the United Nations.
I agree. I
said,
criticized him.
Yes, you did, and said, this is not what we're favoring. This is what the Prime Minister says is not going to happen in our lifetime.
Unfortunately, he was telling the truth, but he had no right to do it. He's a foreign minister.
You shouldn't say that he's telling the truth.
Of course he's telling the truth. For goodness sake, we're living in the theater of the absurd. Let me get
back to Mark's question. He began by saying, are you hopeful?
Ah, yes.
I live with hope.
That's who you are.
That's who we are. That's who we are. If we were 700 million people in the world, so what would we care what the rest of the world thought? We do have to. Unfortunately, we have to. We should. It's an essential condition of Israel's future.
That we make peace with our neighbors. Agreed. But it takes our neighbours as well as us to want to do that. That's the only thing. And when we continue as if we don't have neighbours, let me finish, if we continue as though we don't have neighbours that are playing a game with us, then we're being delusional and we're not helping ourselves. My feeling is I'm prepared to say that 90% of Israelis would bust themselves for peace if they felt that there was a chance. But that what we are undergoing at the moment is a total theatre of the absurd, with Abbas sitting on the sidelines, waiting us to concede more, while the Americans push us to do more, and saying and giving nothing back in return. I hope and I pray that in my lifetime and your lifetime we'll see peace. But I cannot see it happening in the next few years with this group of people controlling the country. I don't consider Abbas a man of peace because he's not in a position to give it even if he wanted to, but I cannot see a man that says the things he says to his people to be the man that's going to be our peace partner. It is not a question of reciprocity. It's a question of they could have had a state. Ehud Barak spoke to us at a conference last week which I attended, and I asked him, because he spoke along the same lines as you, and I said, tell me one thing. You offered Arafat the world, he threw it back in your face. Your friend, inverted commas, Ehud Olmert, offered Abbas much, much, much more, and you criticised him.
A little more.
Well, it couldn't have given more, could have given 110% instead of 100% or 98%, whatever it is. But the point is, Olmert offered more, and he suggested that what Olmert offered was not what he would offer. I said, and now you think you're going to make peace, you're telling us we can make peace, and you think that they're going to accept less than what Olmert offered? And he said, we have to have hope. And I said, on that we all share a view. But we have to be realistic and recognize that the fact that today we are facing an element which, because of political necessity, we can't say it, but the reality is that the Palestinian society which sanctifies suicide bombers, a Palestinian society which encourages children in kindergartens to become killers, that is a criminal society. And until that criminal society emancipates itself from within, it's very hard to visualize us really being brothers together with them, as most Israelis would love to be.
Okay, I want to hear what you have to answer. So at the moment, hold on. What's the answer to this position, which is articulated by many in the Jewish community? But I know that you have a different view of what the reality is right now. Can you articulate why, even in the context of Izzy's concerns, you still do have not some, naive, childish hope, but what you would consider a realistic hope?
Yes. In point of fact, let me just correct one figure you mentioned. You said 90% of Israelis would be ready for a peace settlement.
Maybe 80.
No, he's going to go higher.
No, I would go lower. I would say two-thirds. Two-thirds are ready for a two-state solution with a concession of back to the 67
I believe you're way off too low. Way off too low.
Okay.
I would have said 80. I'll accept. But I believe that most,
may I finish what I was
yes,
going to say?
But most Israelis at the moment
Please.
desperately want peace. But go ahead.
Sure. What I was trying to say is that two-thirds of Israelis are prepared to give back up to the 67 borders. But 80% of Israelis do not believe that there is a partner on the other side. It so happens that in the West Bank, two-thirds of the Arab population, two-thirds, it's stable, are prepared to make a two-state solution recognizing a safe and secure Israel next to Palestine. But 80% of them do not believe that there is a leadership in Israel that is prepared to do that. They believe that they're being played with. They believe that they are making nice talk when it needs to be said to Obama or to the UN. But when it comes dugri, when it comes action, then their land is being taken away from them, and their possibilities for a sovereign state are being diminished out of existence.
So both sides basically feel the same way, is what you're saying.
So there is.
Am I right?
There is this parallel.
Am I right?
There is this parallel on both sides, and the task for creative Jewish leadership, I'm not going to give them advice, but I'm part of this in the Jewish community. The task of Jewish leadership is to put it to the test.
We've put it to the test for the last 10 years.
Let him finish.
What are you
Let him
talking
finish.
about?
Let him finish.
But the way you speak, nothing's changed in 50 years. In point of fact,
What does it mean to put it to the test?
look, Israel will have peace, not with the entire Muslim world, but with part of it, and will make alliances when that day comes with part of the Muslim world against another part of the Muslim world. Iran is not going to become our friend, but we need alliances with Egypt and with Jordan and with Palestine and I think with Syria and Lebanon. That's one thing there. We need alliances with them against a serious threat from Iran. There have been beginnings on this road. We have a peace agreement with Egypt. We have a peace agreement with Jordan. This is bar kaima, this is lasting. It's lasted through wars and intifadas. Now, we should build on that. Now there is a Palestinian leadership, part of which is prepared to make a deal. Let's test them.
You believe them?
Yes, I believe Fayyad when he creates the infrastructure for a Palestinian state. When it's simply, declarations at conferences, I don't believe it. But the Palestinians are finally doing what the Jews did in the 20s and 30s and 40s, in creating state institutions that can govern themselves before there is an actual state. And once there is an actual state, these state institutions can really do their role.
And give me an example of a state institution.
The police.
Give me another one.
The Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Justice, the building that's going on in Nablus, which was the worst. Nablus was the worst. I mean, it was just gangs ripping each other's throats out 10 years ago. There's a civil administration that is running a acceptable, growing economic situation in Nablus. People are free to do their jobs.
And for you, all of these are positive signs.
Absolutely.
That there is a leadership now that would be willing to live side by side with Israel in peace.
Look, when Hamas refuses to say the magic words, we are prepared to live with Israel. Even though the Europeans keep demanding it, even though the UN keeps demanding it, and of course the Americans keep demanding it. They don't say it. I believe them. They are not prepared to do that. But I do also believe Fayyad when he says he is.
How many times have you heard him say it to his own people?
He says it again and again to his own people.
No, he does not.
That's a shibboleth.
That's not a shibboleth. It's the truth.
He says it often enough.
You have to read the speeches
and
have
Abu
to listen
Mazen,
to you have to listen to Palestinian
let
television.
me now speak. He and Abu Mazen have both said that the suicide bombers has been the worst thing for the Palestinian cause. They've indicted their own...
Have harmed our cause. That's correct.
The cause being of an independent Palestine.
You've heard why Sam
Yes.
is realistically hopeful.
Yes.
Has he said something factually wrong?
Well, his statistics on the Palestinians, I could show him completely reverse statistics. I could also show him statistics that show that the overwhelming majority of Palestinians have been supporting and would support a renewal of terrorism against Israel. These are the figures that have come out in Israel only in the last few days. The real problem is that whatever you are building up in Palestine today, you are not building up what I would call a civic society which is based on coexistence with Israel. That is verboten, runs contrary to the educational system, it runs contrary to what's going on in the mosques, it runs contrary to what's going on television, where day in and day out there's hatred being spewed out. And they speak with forked tongues. Abbas and he come to America and speak to Americans and say very nice things. They go back amongst their own people and they have great celebrations and use the names of everyone that's been involved in terrorist activities as Israel.
But they don't see them as terrorists, Izzy. They see them as heroes. They see them as national heroes fighting a war of liberation.
If they were fighting wars of liberation, we would be questioning that perhaps,
Look,
but they would be totally entitled to.
We've had our own terrorists.
We have not made
We've
heroes
also
of, we have not,
made heroes
we
of
have
them.
not made heroes of people who have deliberately gone out to kill women and children.
There are plenty of people in Israel who've made a hero of Baruch.
Not plenty of people.
Many people.
That's not
that
fair.
Is,
Thousands?
That, you know, that is so
There
outrageous.
is a crazy
You have an
community in
obscene,
Israel.
Yes,
lunatic
But it is
element.
not Israeli
and that,
policy.
that crazy community
And you
marches
don't-
in the thousands
you don't-
al-Fahim
you don't
in an
want
Arab
to make
town.
a moral equivalency
that's a
between
terrible-
those who support a Goldstein. One, that's the, but you got two acts in the state of Israel. You got Goldstein, and you've got the guy who murdered Rabin.
Right.
And everybody says, "Oh, you see, the Jews are also extreme." It is so infinitesimal, and it does
Forgive
not
me, but
represent
smaller
a culture.
acts of that kind go on all the time.
Oh,
They
please.
go on all the time.
They
You
don't
are-
represent
there are Jewish
Israeli
vigilantes.
policy.
You are besmirching,
They're
you are
what?
besmirching the
It
Jewish
does not
people when you make
represent
analogies
Israeli
like that.
policy.
There are such things going on, and 98% of the people condemn it and root it out, and there's no tolerance for any of that.
As it should be.
98%.
As it should
now,
be.
if you take about 2%, now in the other society that I'm talking about, it's a reverse situation.
Yes, but I'm also defending that. You see, that is their way of fighting a state that has F-15s when they don't. And so, of all the things that I wish they wouldn't kill our civilian, our children. I do, but that's not the issue. The issue is, do I believe that, as you write, Palestinians doggedly pursue their objective of dismantling us in stages?
Yes.
And I hear Israelis say to me, all the Palestinians are ready to do is a hudna. They will put on hold the ultimate goal of dismantling the state of Israel, and the step towards that goal now is
a
a
hudna a bad
Palestinian
thing?
state.
Is a hudna a bad thing?
Yes.
Relatively speaking, no, but long term, yes.
Exactly.
And boy, I
Does
hear,
the hudna work in our favor or in theirs?
I'm not sure.
It doesn't work. It does not work in our favor. It does
A
not work
hudna
in
means
our
sort
favor.
of a cessation of violence for the moment, putting
For
things
the moment,
on hold.
which could be a decade or a half a century.
Yes,
right?
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well,
But
when
a hudna forever would be
when
fine.
a Muslim says that these Jews here are just like the what was the term the Christians who had a state in the land of Israel for 100 years. It was 100 years. Then we got rid of them. And
Okay, are you saying to
when
me there's-
Muslims
are you
say
saying
this,
to me
we
there's
pay
no
attention. But when
difference?
Muslims say the opposite thing, that we want a hudna with
Yes.
these people, and we want to see whether we can, in fact, come to salam. Whether we
If
can,
they
in
say
fact.
that, then we'll jump with joy. Let me hear them say that. Let me hear them say that. I mean, look at what the hudna's meant in Lebanon. Look at what the hudna's going to mean when we have the next war, and we're going to have the most sophisticated arsenals coming on Israel population.
You see, I
centers.
believe everybody agrees. And the only question is, what is the intent of the other side? If people believed
The intent of the other side is not yet clear. It's not.
do we make peace before it's clear?
I think it's never too soon to make peace.
Oh, I agree. If you can make peace.
Okay? And I'm not naive about the possibilities. I'm just intent on getting there. And so are hundreds of thousands of
Okay,
Israelis.
what is Izzy's biggest mistake in this area?
To always believe the worst and never believe the possibility of something different.
What do you think? Is he right? Is that your mistake?
I believe that the problem that we have faced is that we have been deluding ourselves for so many years and going on the basis of a policy which was based on luft. We have to have hope. We have to be positive. We have to commit ourselves that when and if our neighbours are willing to make peace, we will be jumping in there. But until such time, we should stop making any kinds of concessions that can further weaken us. That's my view.
Even if those concessions can bring that day closer.
Well, if I thought that they would bring that day closer, rather than encourage the others to believe that they're going to get their objective by slashing up in like a salami, piece by piece by piece, then I wouldn't be saying
You know, Josh Lederberg once said, prediction is difficult, especially of the future. Look, the future will depend on what we do today. So in the last 20 years, Israel has concluded a peace agreement with Jordan. In the last 20 years, Israel has gained recognition from the Vatican and the Catholic world. In the last 20 years, Israel has established not only diplomatic ties, but extensive economic ties with China and with India. This is all a result
How's it relevant?
It's all a result of the Oslo process.
No.
It's completely a result of that.
Jordan, couldn't have happened. Jordan, yes.
None of it could have happened without that. The point is, we can't only focus on the end goal of peace. We have to focus on what we do now, on what we do today, on what we do this month, on what's next. And when we focus on that and we figure out ways of making it better, our position in the world, even if we don't get to the ultimate goal next month, even though we haven't achieved that ultimate goal yet, our position, Israel's position in the world, is better when that is done. That's what's happened in the last 20 years.
I want to articulate again what I've heard others say. The issue isn't really about peace. The issue is whether the peace that is available now places Israel in such a position that its security, its long-term security, is somehow in jeopardy. It would be one thing to say, let's try peace. If it doesn't work, no harm, no foul. But what I hear people saying is, if the peace is imposed upon Israel, which does not guarantee it enough security, the downside could be catastrophic.
Absolutely.
Do you realize what the downside is of continuing in the way we are without that peace? That has no downside? We don't see that downside every month?
Well,
it's not the same kind of downside.
To have a peace without secure borders.
Without the peace, Israel has figured out ways of making itself economically and militarily stronger. I think with the peace, it will continue to figure out how to make itself economically and militarily stronger, only it'll be more effective in doing so.
It will be everybody.
I'm not saying you
we're not
in Israel's interest to have peace. Of course it will.
We're not having a fight over peace, for goodness' sake. On this table, all three of us are united.
Exactly.
Our dream, we yearn for peace.
And
we would be willing to do a lot
and
for
the
peace.
two-state solution is absolutely acceptable.
The issue that I say
the
with
issue is
you
not what we're
is
dreaming.
that
The issue is what we're doing.
To partake in the theatre of the absurd by pretending that we have a peace partner who doesn't demonstrate that he is genuinely a peace partner is ultimately playing into the hands of
What would he have to
those.
do to demonstrate it to you?
He has to show that he's willing to give a little bit in return. We've gone a long way in the last 4 or 5 years.
Tell me what he'd have to do. Tell me what he could do.
Let him say, I accept the fact that the right of return is off the cards. Then you'll get Israelis zooming because they know then that it means that we mean peace together.
He considers that to be a bargaining chip.
Well, a bargaining chip, he's waiting until we've given everything away, then he'll have the last bargaining chip to bring us down.
Could he do anything else to make you more comfortable?
Well, he could certainly stop the incitement because contrary to what you all say, contrary to what's being said, the incitement, and I'm following this myself in Israel, is appalling. It's appalling to read what goes on that Palestinian television. It's appalling to look at the statements that these leaders make to their own people about us.
Anything unreasonable? Is there anything unreasonable in what?
No,
what
I find it appalling too. But I also find appalling what Yuli Edelstein is saying on Israeli TV.
It's not appalling in the same way.
What's he saying?
It's not a moral equivalent.
I don't think a two-state solution is on. Believe me, a lot of people, even in favour of a two-state solution, would agree with him. It's not on at the moment. It's not on.
Look, the question is, what are we doing to make it happen?
What can we do more?
The dream we all share. Fine, I grant you.
Why don't you
all share the same
Why don't you
dream.
ask the other question? What are they doing to
That's
make
an
it possible?
entirely fair question. That should be asked every day.
What's the answer?
So far, zero. Not even a word. Zero. They come and speak to American Jews and tell them, we want peace. That's their reciprocity. Thank you very much.
You know, like nothing has ever changed. The fact is that since the 2008 war in Gaza, Hamas has been shooting at people who shoot mortars into Israel. Hamas says this is against us. That's a change.
It's a change.
Something's been, they've been made to sit up and take notice.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the point.
The point is that Palestinians do things all the time. They're now doing something to allow for a negotiation to go forward.
You think Hamas is ready to negotiate?
I'm not saying that Hamas is ready
What
to
are you
negotiate.
saying?
I'm saying that that the PA is ready to negotiate, and that announcing when Biden comes to Israel that we're going to construct 1,600 apartments that aren't in any case going to be constructed for another to 3 years.
It's a long time ago already.
Yes, it was 6 months ago.
Storm in the
long time
teacup.
ago.
Storm
That's
in
right.
the teacup. In Jerusalem, noch too.
Look, there is a government.
Should they have extended the settlement freeze?
No question.
Should they have extended the settlement freeze?
Absolutely. I don't see how Bibi could show his face. He promised the whole of his country 10 months. Now, he got nothing back in return.
So he should
for that.
not have extended it.
No. And what I think he should do, we need to try to get to a negotiation where the Obama administration goes back to what applied during the Bush administration, where there was only major development in the major settlement blocks. That's the situation that may well still apply now, if President Obama decides
Well,
to come to
the
an
Bush
accommodation.
administration was in office for 7 years before it occurred to them that there was anybody on the Palestinian side to say anything to. I mean, they didn't bother. They said there's nobody.
On the contrary, they worked very closely with them till they had to give up because they discovered that there was so much lying and cheating that they got fed up. You remember when the breakdown
we
took
learned
place.
that in the Clinton administration, not in the Bush administration. So that was no excuse.
No, the Bush administration in its first 2 years
Bush
tried very
administration-
hard with the Palestinians. And you remember the arms.
The Bush administration defined this as something that was not going to happen. They didn't invite anybody from the Palestinian side to come to Washington. They didn't see it as something that was going to be happening on their watch in 8 years.
Yeah, probably
After
right.
7 years, they decided, oh, wait a minute. We can't just leave without having tried. So they tried, and they failed. Okay? Obama tried from the first day. Actually, he tried at the very beginning of his administration and very quickly realized this was not going to happen just like that because he said so. And he gave up. He gave up for
Wow.
10 months. And it wasn't until the end of 2009 that the Obama administration said, oh, wait a minute. we can't just leave this. It's doing too much damage in the rest of the world. And at that point, they said, look, we need this settlement freeze. They sat around trying to figure out what would make it better for them, easier going for them in Jerusalem. They decided to send the best friend of Israel in America, Joe Biden.
Are you saying that the Obama administration in the early stages was friendly to Israel? Is that what you're saying to me?
They were very friendly to
Wow.
Israel. The Obama administration has in fact done more for Israel's security than the Bush administration
Really?
did. Yes, really.
Okay.
Is he
Really.
right?
He's right in technological military terms, but in terms of the pressures against Israel and the way Israel has been beaten up in the world,
forgive me.
and the way every agency in the world has got the green light to go and beat up Israel.
The
because
Obama
of it.
administration, unlike the Bush administration, is taking seriously its role of trying to make a peace. Everybody knows that the U.S. government is foursquare behind Israel. And the Obama administration, if there was any doubt during these atmospherics of trying to get a negotiation going, if there was any doubt, they proved their bona fides with these Maasi things that they did on the security front. Stronger than anything that had been done before.
We have to begin to close. I will read you one more line from your own column.
Okay.
Rabin would probably not have placated the Palestinians or the Americans to the same extent as Netanyahu. You think Netanyahu has placated the Americans too greatly?
I think that Netanyahu has played the game very well. I think he's done better than most people anticipated he would as a prime minister. But knowing Rabin personally, as I did, I think that Rabin would have blown a gasket if he would have been told to impose a settlement freeze and would not have accepted it. I think that Rabin would not have gone along with the Oslo Accords to the extent when the last conversation I had with Rabin just before he passed away, he said to me, Izzy, this is a gamble for peace, but if it fails, we've got to go and clean this whole thing up because we can't keep going in one direction only. Rabin is being misrepresented totally as a man that just was going headlong into a situation where he'd just give anything away for peace. He realized it takes two for tango. He would not have divided Jerusalem. He would not have gone back to those borders. He had very strong views which would not be shared by most people in the Labour Party today.
On the contrary, Rabin wouldn't have had to do as much as Bibi does. Bibi has baggage, and Bibi has something to prove. Rabin didn't have that to prove. There would have been very little difficulty between a Rabin government and an Obama government. There would have been very little difficulty between an Olmert government and a Rabin and an Obama government. There is great difficulty between a Bibi government and an Obama government. But then again, you know, there wouldn't have been any difficulty between a Bibi government and a Bush government either.
Well, it's good to see that the American people seem to have a higher regard for Bibi than they have for their own president, American Jews. I saw the American Jewish Committee report said 63% support Netanyahu and 49% support their own president.
If you're talking about the American Jewish Committee report that came out in April, that showed actually something very different. If you look beyond the headline, and the headline that the American Jewish Committee was seeking to point out, if you look at the figures that they reported, they showed that there was not slightly better, but substantially better support for the Obama administration among American Jews than there is among Americans generally.
Oh,
that
yes.
was the case at the election
But
time.
substantially down.
And it's down.
Dramatically down.
It's down, but it is still 20-something percentage points ahead of the rest of the population.
Yeah, agreed.
On Obama-nomics,
and you pointed it out.
On Obama-nomics, on the health care program, where a lot of American Jews felt that a public option was necessary. They weren't satisfied with what Obama did. And of course, on Middle East. On Middle East, American Jews are a majority of them in support of the Obama administration on Middle East policy.
I don't think that committed American Jews would be
committed.
support.
We're talking committed here. No, forgive me. When it goes your way, it's 80-90%. But when it's 57%,
on a poll,
but doesn't go your way,
poll,
it's not only the committed that
the
really
American
count.
Jewish Committee poll showed that American Jews were very disturbed with President Obama's attitude towards Israel, even if a large number of them still continued voting.
That is true. That was true, by the way.
57%.
That was true.
Support his Middle East policy, not just his policy. What they have difficulties about is the Iran issue. And on that question, the American Jewish Committee chose to go with that as the headline, rather than with what everything else in their poll demonstrated.
What was your reaction to the attempt to create a Pledge of Allegiance? First, it was only for the non-Jew, but now the bill proposes that there be an oath of allegiance for anybody who wants to become an Israeli citizen, Jew or non-Jew. Do you have a reaction to that?
Look, in principle, an oath of allegiance
To a Jewish and democratic state of Israel.
Okay. If you randomly selected 10 Jews in the state of Israel and asked them, what's a Jewish state? You wouldn't get agreement. Forgive me. You know you wouldn't get agreement on what is a Jewish state.
I don't know.
I know.
The state for Jews.
That's something different. That's something very different. I have no difficulty in singing Hatikva, in singing that
Nefesh Yehudi.
Nefesh Yehudi, and
the Jewish soul yearns.
That's right. But to impose this kind of a loyalty oath, particularly, precisely on the people against whom it is intended by the people who proposed it, against the Arabs, against non-Jews, that is just undermining the Declaration of Independence of Israel. It is undoing what was done at the outset. It is turning back the clock.
How?
How?
The state of Israel was established as a Jewish state. And then everybody was invited in.
You know as well as I that a state for the Jews is a completely different thing than a Jewish state.
I don't know. I do not know that at all. It was established. The partition plan of the United Nations said we are going to create a Jewish state and an Arab state. Everybody understood what it was.
And with the rights of minorities to full freedom. That's the only qualifier.
That's what's being undermined with this law.
How? Nobody's denied any civil rights.
I must say to you,
nobody's denied any civil rights.
I oppose
You
this.
have to now pledge allegiance. You're an Arab. you now have to pledge allegiance to what Shas defines as the Jewish state?
No, what
Shas has nothing to do with this.
Nothing to do with it.
It has a lot to do with it, unfortunately.
But wait,
that's who is in their face.
Why would an Arab want to live in Israel if he didn't want to be living in a Jewish state?
In point of fact, Arabs in Israel are loyal to the state.
Halavai they were.
Well,
We have a lot of problems now at the moment. There's a radicalization in the Arab world, which in the Arab community, which worries me. And you have Arab political representatives which are expressing what most Jews would regard as close to treason, linking up with Hezbollah, linking up with Hamas, and standing up against the very essential security interests of the state. We are worried about it because I think we have to bring the Arabs into a situation where they have full equality, but that they recognize that with equality there are obligations. And you can't be free in a country which is under siege by a sea of people that want to drown us to people from within calling for our destruction. It can't be tolerated. To that extent, I was opposed to this law when it applied to everybody except Jews. Once it applies over the board, I have nothing against it, except I think the timing could have been a little bit different, because at the moment we have enough problems in the world for people to have misinterpret and distort these situations.
But you're against
there's
it
nothing
philosophically
against
as well.
I'm against a law that applies to some of the citizens and not to others.
How does it do that? This applies to anybody who wants to become a citizen. But it does not apply to any existing Arab citizen of Israel. It only applies to somebody who wants to become an Israeli citizen. And in America, you can't become an American citizen without pledging allegiance to a democracy and a constitution. What's the difference?
It's like you cover your eyes and you make believe nobody sees you. The point is, this law is invented by people who are trying to stick it to the Arab minority in Israel.
come on. This law is
precisely its intention
This law is
right now.
This law is to make it clear, anybody who wants to become a citizen, be clear you're coming under the condition you accept this as a Jewish democratic state. And if you can't accept this as a Jewish democratic state, please don't become.
Forgive me, but those people are not even allowed to come into the state of Israel. If they
Well, who do you think it's aimed at?
It's a manufactured political issue, manufactured for partisan political purposes by Yisrael Beitenu.
It may have been. It may have been. But I'm not against it. But I agree with you, what you say.
But conceptually, why does it bother you?
Because
I've had people on here say the timing was bad.
Yes.
And I understand that argument. I don't understand any other argument other than it's done at the wrong time. I had Ken Bob here from Amenu, who says to me, if it had been done in 48, he would have had no problem with it. By the way, he has problems with Hatikva. So the issue becomes an issue of, is it a red flag at the wrong time?
Look, I have
But conceptually, I don't understand why anybody would be against it.
I don't have any problem with Hatikva. Maybe Ken does. Good friend, good buddy. I have no difficulty in saying, Liot am chofshi be'artzenu. I have no difficulty in saying
You're
that.
going to make an Arab sing that? You're going to get an Arab citizen of Israel singing his national anthem. The soul of the Jew yearns for a return. We've been dreaming of this for 2,000 years.
Mark,
you want an Arab Israeli citizen of Israel to have to sing that? I've had Palestinians on, who are citizens of Israel, who say to me it's very troubling.
I wouldn't even make a Jew sing it, much less an Arab.
But you do.
But I sing it. Deal with that.
Okay. Boy, I agree with you. I just find it to be intellectually contradictory to be comfortable with Hatikva and not comfortable with a statement that if you're going to be an Israeli citizen, your allegiance is to the Jewish democratic state of Israel.
That's not decided by fiat, by the way. It's not decided by you.
There's a symbolic
There's a certain
affirmation.
problematic involved in describing it as the Jewish democratic state of Israel.
Not for me.
Well, not for me either.
And not for me.
But to the people against whom this is intended.
But we're letting the state of Israel be defined by people who are basically uncomfortable with Israel.
Yes.
The people who are comfortable with Israel do not have a problem with it. And at the moment, I am worried that in some way it is Israel becoming a ghetto, having a ghetto mentality on a national scale.
What worries me is the tendency to make things worse. There are plenty of people on the Arab and the Muslim side who are looking to make things worse. There shouldn't be as many people on our side looking to make things worse.
But what makes things
This is
worse
intended
for
to make
you?
it worse.
Okay, it's not intended to make things worse.
It's precisely intended
not
for that.
intended.
No. It's political opportunism.
That's
seen
right.
At this moment in time, but I'm not against it. I'm all for it.
Do you like corned beef? I mean, I've said to myself, well, now we should go out to a deli and all eat together. You know, I refuse to put a period here. There must only be a semicolon. I have other questions that I really would love the two of you to address.
You say
but
when.
That's so sweet of you. And the next time you're back,
My pleasure.
you know, I love you so much, and I love the fact that you always make time for me. And if there's any way at all I can ever get to speak with you, I always want to, so we will continue to chase you. You are a delight and wonder, and I'm so glad you came, and I am going to take you up on your offer anytime.
I'm good for it.
Okay, the two of you are just the best. And it's interesting, as I was listening to you, I'm saying to myself, does the audience understand as they listen to you? They're getting a level of conversation you normally don't get in this Jewish community. So I thank you both not only for the passion, but for the intellect. And again, we will continue this as soon as we possibly can. That was wonderful. That was just wonderful. That was wonderful. And those were the thoughts of Sam Norich, Executive Director and Publisher of The Forward, and Izzy Leibler, whose columns appear on the Jerusalem Post, in the Jerusalem Post, also online. I hope you enjoyed hearing what the two of them had to say. As always, I invite you to be in touch with me with any thoughts or comments to the ideas expressed by Sam or Izzy. Please email me or write me this week. I look forward to hearing from many of you. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. Be well, my friends.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who can send a tax-deductible contribution of $36 or more to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media to help support our programming. Tax-deductible checks may be made out to Jen and mailed to Gem, Post Office Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York, 10471. Please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD, and we thank you for your kind support.
L'chaim is a presentation of Jewish Education in Media.